Welcome to Simple Career. In today's video, we will be talking about sales. Now, quite a lot of youngsters they often tend to be confused whether they should start a career in sales, and if they did, how does this career eventually grow? Will they be a door-to-door salesperson? Now, let me tell you, sales is an important skill when it comes to personality development, when it comes to professional career growth, and when it comes to a personal life as well. And for that reason, we have someone today who is actually the regional head of sales at LinkedIn. He is an engineer by degree and he has over 14 years of experience in the sales field. So he will be sharing valuable tips on why you should start a career in sales, how to grow this particular career, and also tips and tricks on how you can improve your sales skills when it comes to a physical face-to-face meeting or when it comes to cold calling. So make sure you subscribe to the channel to watch more of similar content and do like the video if you find it useful, as it will definitely help me with the YouTube algorithm. So without any further ado, let's welcome Siddharth AJMERA.
Nikhil, pleasure is always mine. Thank you for the opportunity.
So Siddharth, quite a lot of youngsters they often tend to be confused whether they should start their career in sales or not. So as per you, why do you think someone should start their career in sales? And also, can you just tell us briefly on how does a career eventually grow in this particular field?
It's an interesting question. And there are a couple of things which I've always felt. I think, people today, they don't know a lot about sales per se. And sales in itself is a domain which has a lot of aspects to it. But here are a couple of things which I feel put sales as a career, something which a lot of professionals out there should look after. One of my earliest mentors always kept on sharing with me. Yeah, so the first thing which he shared was, in order to grow in any organization, you got to be either in a revenue generating model or you got to be in a revenue saving model, which essentially means if you see traditionally, people who become the CEO of any organization are either from sales or from the finance background, right? And I've done my engineering at a point of time, thought, how do I go and get to that level, right? So I think that's the advice which I've always kept to my heart if I want to grow. And I've seen a lot of leaders and mentors who I have worked with follow this path, right? Either in a revenue generating model, which is sales essentially. That means you get revenue for an organization and the organization helps you keep on growing. And at the same time, either in a finance background where you keep saving for your organization, right? So top line, bottom line, I think, business always functions on these two aspects. Here is one of the other reasons which I also feel. When you're doing sales, you're like an entrepreneur or an entrepreneur. So even though I may not be handling my own business, I do come from a very business oriented family, and wanting to do business was always a keen motivator per se. And I do feel that being in sales empowers you to go out there and handle your business, right? Whether it is a B2B or a B2C sales model, at the end of the day, you are the CEO of your own business, right? So I think these are two factors which a lot of people out there don't really understand per se. And there's another common myth in India. If you say sales, people do say sales and marketing, right? So that, yeah, it's not door to door sales, right? It's very different. But I can go on and on about this, but I think two primary reasons which I just shared with you. Yeah.
Now, when it comes to sales, what are the three most important skills which are required?
You need a lot of skills per se to be a good sales professional. But I essentially feel that as a sales professional, one of the key things which one needs is persistence. Uh, why do I say that? Is sales as a journey is earmarked with a lot of failures. Trust me on this. Go out there and ask any sales professional the number of times they have won versus they have lost. That percentage will always be higher on the failure side, right? So you got to be persistent in terms of not giving up, right? And essentially going after that lead, that account, that business which you want to go and get for your organization or for your own business, right? So essentially perseverance. Second, what really when I look at sales professionals or when I started my journey is resilience. Why do I see that? Along with failures, along with going after and keep on having that attitude of winning, you also need to have that grit that, hey, even after being beaten down 10 times, you still have the energy to get up and really go after that, right? So I've seen a lot of professionals who are persistent, but at a point of time, they probably don't believe in themselves. This is where the resiliency kicks in. I started my career in 2008 in deep crisis in recession, and man, it wasn't a ride, and which really helped me understand and put a lot of things in perspective. Through my career and when I see some of the great sales professionals, these are two non-negotiables. You've got to have them. Third, essentially, is primarily motivator, right? I think being in, if you want to be really successful in sales, the motivation always is intrinsic rather than any external factors or the outcome. I think a lot of sales professionals who, after a victory yesterday, always go up tomorrow as if they are on the scoreboard is still zero, right? I'm a big ardent fan of cricket. As a batsman or as a bowler, even if you have like a great day today, the next day when you go to the field, the scoreboard says zero, right? So you got to start with that and the hunger to keep on going out there and to go and get those wins. I think motivation, which is very intrinsic, plays a big role when you want to be really looking at a good, successful sales professional. I'm not getting the exact word, but I think it's more towards that hunger to succeed, right? So I think a mixture of these three things gives you a blend of a sales professional who would you one should love to partner with, right? So yeah.
Now, cold calling is one of the hardest parts in sales purely because the person on the other side might not even be giving enough attention towards what you're speaking. So, what are your few tips to actually improve the cold calling skills?
See, as I was just saying, like one of the biggest parts of a sales professional is to handle rejection. And I do understand that, for the longest of time, cold calling has been one of the biggest traits which a sales guy should possess. However, in these times when, the world has gone through a social revolution, I think, I'm still talking like a 5 years back, it has already happened, right? So we're not living in a world where, or rather, we are living in a world where all the information out there is ubiquitous. If you want to find a contact number or an email ID of any professional out there, I think, a smart professional can find that out in no time, actually, right? So the information which you're seeking is out there. Uh, where am I going with this? So I want to probably spend a little more time in terms of the essence of cold calling. If we really dig deeper, cold calling is a way of getting to your prospect on the other side and piquing their interest. But with so much of information available out there and like hundreds of sales professionals coming at you, unless you have something which you really understand about that person and are able to add value to their either a business need or their personal need, your cold call is going to be a passe. Essentially, what I'm trying to tell is we have moved towards a world where we need to have more social way of selling. Still, the means can be you pick up the phone and dial that person. However, you are more informed. by virtue of the information which is available out there, and trying to make sense of how can I make the most of this opportunity to go and cross that hurdle of that first conversation. So, yes, at the same time, a sales professional cannot get away without cold calling. It is one of the most important tools that one should possess. However, it is very important for us to be equipped with the right information which can help us go and cross that bridge. At the same time, even after having all these information, you may land up with a professional who on the side is maybe caught up in a time where they're not open to listening to your conversation. So you may get a rejection, or you definitely will get a rejection. But how can you again pick up that receiver and dial the another number and keep at it? I think that's more important as well. So two parts: social information, how do we make the most of it, and keep at cold calling your prospects. I mean, there's no easy way out here.
Now, once you are in a sales meeting, once you are actually in front of the client, what do you think is the most important step to make sure that you are able to close the deal?
Yeah, there's no single step, Nikhil, out here. Like, sales is a set of processes which you continuously, when you do that, it becomes a practice. And so essentially, when you go and meet out a customer, there are a number of bridge which you need to cross, or maybe let's put those as milestones, right? So in a sales conversation or a business conversation, the first thing which one should look at is what are we trying to solve for? That's the first step, right? In terms of really understanding what does the business need. Even after having a business need, understanding what is the prioritization of that business need. How do we do that? Is by measuring the impact. Let's say if a company decides to invest in a solution or a product, how is it going to impact their business? The person who you are interacting with also has a personal value to be gained out of this. So either if you're interacting with a CMO, a sales officer, or a CHRO, or a chief learning officer, everybody is trying to make an impact to the business with some kind of a solution or a partnership or a product offering. So as a sales professional, you need to understand what is the business need we are trying to solve for, and what is the impact which they see that this will bring to the business. At the same time, really understand what is the personal value which this person who you're interacting with is trying wants to gain with that. I'll come to this in terms of why do we need that. The third element to a sales process is really understanding the timeline to this. After measuring the impact uh, and having got some kind of an insight into how critical this is for the business, which is essentially helping you with a timeline. So from at what point of time to at what point the customer is likely to go ahead and close the deal. So that essentially gives you that timeline. You need to find that. Unless you know the impact, unless you know how the business is going to get affected, you will not get a timeline. Because whenever you go and ask a customer, when are we looking at closing this? They say, we want it yesterday, or we want it like 2 months back. We want to go and get this solved for, but unless we have these information, you'll not be able to put a timeline to this, which again gets us to a very important point: who are we interacting with, right? So the person handling this, uh, does he have a buy-in, does he have a ear with your board, or if you're directly talking to that CXO, then understanding how it can help them from a business perspective. So the right authority. So if you look at in a sales process, after going through this process, when you pitch in a solution, how does it tie back to the business need? That is vision mapping, which I say, right? If there is a business need and there is a solution, how does it help them going to achieve that? So showcasing that vision mapping to your connect is very essential. And of course, the most exciting piece of this is going to be the negotiations, right? So uh, uh, I'd always have customer at the center. As a business professional, unless, or rather, the most important thing is as long as you have customer at the core, your customer at the core, uh, which essentially helps you go and build that rapport, and they see that value coming from your side, that you're not just invested, not interested in my money, but at the same time you want to make an impact to my business. So that is essentially to the core. So it may not be like one process, Nikhil. If you miss out on any of these processes, you may not be the one shaking hands with your customer at the end of the day, right? So it's a set of processes. All of them work in conjunction, in a tandem. One without each becomes your weakling, and we don't want to have that as a profession.
Now, follow ups is very important when it comes to sales. People often tend to miss out on this purely because they might not want to get rejected, or they just tend to forget that they have to follow up with a particular client. So, what are your few tips when it comes to follow ups?
I do get this question a lot of times, and in my experience, Um, the one thing which we always, all sales professionals do is, pick up that phone and reach out to the customer. Hey, we met last week, what's happening about it? How do we go? You had set a timeline of, let's say, a week from now, and where do we go from here? Which is where, identifying the two important aspects of a sales process is the impact to the business and the personal value which we talked about. This comes into play. Now is the time that you, as a sales professional, actually tap into this thing. So, let's say you're the customer. I would say, hey, Nikhil, thank you for taking this time out. We spoke about how this solution is going to, cater to your business and how critical this, like, how you help us explain the criticality or the nature of how the solution is going to impact the business. We are 1 week down the line, so I want to check with you, how do we move ahead on this thing? So yeah, it is another way of reaching out to your probable customer, and really asking him, when are you closing with me, right? So and that's why essentially it's very important to know the impact of a solution or a product offering or a partnership which you are envisaging with this particular person or a customer, right? So, and personal value. What are they going to get out of it? Any solution which your prospect is going to handle is going to get him or her in certain kind of an elevation in there, whether it's a business elevation, whether it is in terms of recognition for them. That's where the personal value also comes into play. Like, we talked about an intrinsic motivation for them to work with you. What is the motivation? If you have that information, you can always tap into that. So a follow-up is not a follow-up anymore, right? A follow-up becomes a conversation, becomes a conversation. And a lot of times I've seen amazing sales professionals who actually never ask you for business. They have a conversation with you, and at the end of the day, you actually tend to have a conversation with that sales professional. Say, hey, we've talked about this. Let's go and get this across the board. That person has never talked about business to me, has talked everything else, right? So I think that is a very good quality of a sales professional. But unless you know the impact, the personal side of it to the business and to that person, you may not be able to reach there. Essentially, what I'm saying is identifying that value proposition. So when you're following up, ensure that you're just not following up for that, for that contract to be signed. It's essentially keeping them or the customer at the core and building onto that. So yeah,
Now, why, in your opinion, a lot of salespeople they actually fail to sell?
it's a given nature that failure is a part of a sales professional's journey. right? And it essentially helps you go and learn a lot of things which cannot be taught in a textbook or in a pseudo let's say a case study environment. It's a virtue by which you know what steps one needs to avoid to go and get that closure. Uh, having said that, uh, we talked about the different processes of any sales closure, right? Uh, but however, one of the things which I have found that what sales professionals normally would lack at is the follow-up piece. I think it's a proven study and it has been quoted in a lot of sales journals. Uh, the failure to follow up and going and reaching out to that person, right? uh, essentially leads to your pipeline dropouts, which essentially ties back to a lot of things which we have spoken about, which is handling failures. A lot of times we keep having that hopium that, I will get to close this thing, I will get to hear a positive confirmation. And the key thing to avoid this, rather, let's say, how can we avoid this thing? Is by asking those tough questions. And how does one do that? Well, it's an acquired skill, I would say. And, essentially, again, what really is at the core is building that connection or that rapport such that you're able to go and ask your prospect that, hey, uh, when are we looking to close this thing? And what are the timelines? We have already agreed upon this thing. So where are we? Can you help me get in front of your different other stakeholders who are a part of this decision-making process? So, not asking these tough questions, having hopium, and failure to follow ups. I think these are some of the reasons which I have seen people not doing consistently, and that leading to, um, you know, probably unhappy sales professionals.
Now, let's say that you have couple of years of sales experience and you have few sales professionals who are reporting to you now. So, what are your tips on increasing the productivity of the team or increasing the efficiency of the sales team?
It takes me back to my early days a as a sales leader, as a sales manager. I think one of the most important things is to learn delegation, right? When I look back my journey and when I look back a lot of other sales professionals who keep falling into this trap is wanting to do a lot of things themselves, right? You have just been elevated as a sales leader and going to handle a big team. One of the first things that we need to learn is let go, right? You can't do work of, let's say, your all team members on your own. You got to ensure that you have that trust and you have that, uh, of course, I would not say uh, the dependency, but at the same time, really understanding what that sales professional needs, right? So, one of the key things which to one of the key things which a professional needs to learn is um, how do we go and be a partner to that professional. A lot of times I've seen leaders fail to do this thing, and they either focus on the core metrics of the business, however not having that compassionate side or that empathetic side of really understanding what is going on with that sales professional. It it can happen that something is wrong in their personal, probably in their personal life, right? Or it may be a skill issue, and investing that time is very critical. And having that one-on-one conversation and no holds barred, and helping them get to a pedestal where they can really open up. I think that also is very key understanding for any sales leader out there is how well do you know your team member? What really drives them, right? I essentially also believe that you cannot keep on motivating your sales team. You have to create an environment such that people are themselves motivated, right? And essentially, sales professional is always sinusoidal, right? You will have good days and you have a lot of bad days. So how do you ensure that they are continuously motivated? It's not going to happen. You cannot keep on motivating, let's say, a sales team of 8 team members, for example, right? Everyone is going to have a good day or a bad day at field. So if you have the environment where people can be really themselves, can bring their whole selves to work, that's what a sales leader should be focusing on.
So guys, I do hope you have taken enough valuable tips on how can you grow your career in sales. And if you did, make sure you subscribe, make sure you like the video. And also, you can watch the next video over here. This video talks about leadership skills which you require to develop if you want to grow in your professional career. So with that said, see you all in the next video.